One, could you tell us more about the altercation that happened at the Arlington Cemetery?
Well, I think, first of all, the altercation at Arlington Cemetery is the media creating a story where I really don't think that there is one. Kamala Harris is so asleep at the wheel that she won't even do an investigation into what happened, and she wants to yell at Donald Trump because he showed up. She can go to hell.
In a wild and disgusting move that is drawing strong condemnation, J.D. Vance just tried to shift the blame of Trump's Arlington Cemetery debacle onto Kamala Harris, baselessly attacking her, saying she was disgraceful and that she should, quote, go to hell. And we have footage of his disgusting remarks from his campaign speech today in Erie, Pennsylvania, and the immediate backlash from it coming up in just a moment. But on top of that, his disgraceful remarks came just as Donald Trump released official video footage from his disastrous trip to Arlington Cemetery, and it makes the whole situation even more disturbing. Now, before I play Trump's disgusting clip and then Vance's despicable attacks, here is a quick refresher of the controversy surrounding Trump's Arlington visit.
We're learning about an incident that took place when former President Trump visited Arlington National Cemetery for a wreath-laying ceremony on Monday. NPR was the first to report that two Trump campaign staffers had a confrontation with a cemetery official who tried to prevent them from filming. Federal law prohibits political campaign or election-related activities within Army National Military cemeteries to include photographers, content creators, or any other persons attending for purposes or in direct support of a partisan political candidate's campaign. Trump campaign spokesman Stephen Chung denied portions of the report, saying that no physical altercation occurred, adding that the campaign would be willing to release footage.
And you obviously just heard there that it is a federal crime to film at Arlington Cemetery for the purposes of a political campaign. But when has federal regulation stopped the convicted felon from committing misdemeanors or even high treason? So allow me to ask you a question, astute viewer. Do you think Trump's campaign released A, the promised footage supporting their claim that no personal political photography occurred, or B, an illegally obtained propaganda video where Trump used our fallen heroes and their families against the backdrop of the most hallowed ground in our nation as pawns in a political propaganda video for TikTok? Survey says
we lost 13 great people. What a horrible day it was. We didn't lose one person in 18 months. And then they took over that disaster, the leaving of Afghanistan.
And some of these veterans were sort of just aghast that even in any way, shape, or form, Arlington National Cemetery, arguably the most sacred place in our country, was being used as a backdrop for a political purpose.
Jonathan, I looked at the same pictures that you're alluding to now and describing at Arlington, taken with the former president, and the thought rolled immediately through my mind, is nothing sacred. That is sacred ground. And the idea that any candidate of any party would use intentionally or unintentionally use that sacred ground as a prop for a political campaign is beyond condemnation.
Absolutely despicable, and like he said, beyond condemnation. And apparently, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, because here is what J.D. Vance had to say when he was asked about Trump's Arlington stunt.
There is verifiable evidence that the campaign was allowed to have a photographer there. There's verifiable, they were invited to have a photographer there. There's verifiable evidence that the families of these poor people who had their loved ones die 3 years ago at Abbey Road, Abbey Gate, those 13 Americans, a lot of them were there with the president. They invited him to be there and to support them. That's not an insult to the memories of their loved ones. They wanted Donald Trump there, and thank God that we have a president who stands with our veterans instead of one who runs away from them. Now, it is amazing to me that you have apparently somebody at Arlington Cemetery, some staff member, had a little disagreement with somebody, and the media has turned this into a national news story. You know what I think our veterans care a lot more about? That Kamala Harris's VP nominee lied about his military service. I think that our veterans care a lot more about that. And the other thing that our veterans care The other thing our veterans care a lot more about is that 3 years ago, 13 brave, innocent Americans died, and they died because Kamala Harris refused to do her job, and there hasn't been a single investigation or a single firing. Look, sometimes mistakes happen. That's just the nature of government, the nature of military service. But to have those 13 Americans lose their lives and not fire a single person is disgraceful. Kamala Harris is disgraceful. We're going to talk about a story out of those 13 brave, innocent Americans who lost their lives. It's that Kamala Harris is so asleep at the wheel that she won't even do an investigation into what happened, and she wants to yell at Donald Trump because he showed up. She can go to hell.
And maybe he should think twice before talking out of his ass, calling Abbey Gate Abbey Road, throwing baseless false accusations against Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, and claiming that she's going to hell. Because frankly, the only person I see that's guaranteed a spot in hell is the convicted felon, adulterer, draft-dodging cadet bone spurs who called our military heroes suckers and losers, and then proceeded to use the anniversary of fallen soldiers in Afghanistan as a political ploy to illegally film some promotional propaganda. And I'll leave you all with the eloquent condemnation of Professor Michael Eric Dyson, who was on CNN immediately after J.D. Vance made those comments to give his take on the situation.
The level of disrespect must not be overlooked. The normalization of this kind of coarse rhetoric is itself problematic. The opprobrium of a vice presidential candidate speaking about a presidential candidate in such terms is problematic. Number two, Mr. Trump is seeking to deflect all of the reporting about him calling them losers and suckers. So at any point, fisticuffs at Arlington, which is unseemly to say the least, distracts us from the fact that this man has not shown profound respect for the military.
Mr. Trump has disrespected the most important heroes in American history at that graveyard. 400,000 of them. So, of course, I don't like Trump anyways. I'm inclined to believe it. So I think Matt's right. We should have more transparency from the Army. The Trump campaign spokesman alleged that the Arlington National Cemetery official, quote, clearly suffering from a mental health episode. I want to know. I got family at Arlington. I want to know if there is somebody mentally deranged working there, or is it perhaps that the Trump campaign, not for the first time, is lying, and that they disrespected the most sacred ground in America?
And much like the question I posited earlier, it doesn't take a stable genius to read between the lines, take a look at the context clues, and make an educated guess on what the correct answer of that question is. Thank you all for watching. For Really American, I'm Kenny Hesse. I'll see you all in the next one.